So today, the session right now, it's an hour session. It's a panel session. It's going to be hosted by Yinglan, and it's called Hacking Growth, Leveraging New Marketing Trends and Tech to Build Your Franchise in Asia. So Yinglan, please go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Yep. Thank you so much for the introduction. So I'm Yinglan. I run Sequoia Capital in Southeast Asia. Sequoia Capital is a 40-year-old venture capital fund. We specialize in building enduring companies. 22% of Nasdaq's market cap actually comprises of Sequoia-backed companies. And we have a very fond interest of games. Globally, we have partnered with more than 20 companies, gaming companies globally. Actually, Electronic Arts was probably one of our oldest gaming partnerships. And more recently, we have also partnered with several gaming companies, gaming ecosystem related companies. And today we are very delighted to have with us two esteemed, founding members of illustrious gaming companies or related gaming-related companies. I shall let Chih-Han and Oliver say a little bit about themselves before we start the ball rolling.
Hello everyone.
Hey, what's up?
Go ahead. You can.
No problem. So my name's Oliver Jones. I'm a founder of a gaming startup based out of Bangalore in India called Moonfrog Labs, which is spelled as it sounds, Moonfrog. And it's founded by a team who just hopped from Zynga. And within Zynga, we saw the advantages of a fast-moving mobile company in an emerging market. And that's essentially us. We're a cross-functional team who specialize in making free-to-play games that can be built to a very large scale.
Yeah. Cool. Hi, my name is Chih-Han. We're co-founder of Appear. So Appear is a cross-screen marketing company that help gaming company or group brands to reach your target audience across different screens. So basically, we recognize how people own different screens and then do the marketing across that. And we also specialize in ROI optimization based on machine learning. And so we have helped a lot of publishers and developers launch their games across different regions. So previously, I'm also from gaming industry. So I ran a indie studio that produced social mobile games. And before that, I was an AI scientist for 10 years. So, and building a lot of autonomous robots. So current venture is sort of a nice combination of my previous two experiences.
Super. So, quick show of hands in the audience. How many game developers? Okay, half. How many game advertising companies here? Okay. And how many of you are publishers? Okay, quite a number. Super. So I mean, the reason you are here is probably you recognize that Asia is the frontier for growth in gaming markets. I think we had a panelist yesterday from AsiaSoft say that there will be 1.8 billion in revenues created in mobile gaming in Asia, Southeast Asia alone. So I think because to kick off the question, from our panelists, what are some of the interesting trends you see in gaming, either mobile gaming, from the publishing side, in Southeast Asia, India, Taiwan? What are some of the sort of high-level trends you are seeing?
You want to go first?
Sure. So as a developer, I'll tend to look at my audience and where they are. And I feel like the elephant in the room right now is smartphone penetration in emerging markets. And I think this is entirely being driven by what we would call Gen Y audiences. And when I say, everyone's got their own definition of what Gen Y is. For the sake of this talk, the way I like to think of it is anyone, these days, age 15 to about 22. So, not me. I know you're probably doubtful of that, but there you have it. And that market actually represents about 2K people over in China, and no, sorry, not K, million, sorry, 200 million people over in China and 400 million in India. And these guys, I mean, when you look at smartphone penetration in India specifically, in urban areas, you're looking at about 20 to 23% smartphone penetration. And so maybe it's not as high as other places in Asia, but you've got, it's a growing population. So it's still, it represents a very large market. So in, say, well, not just the metropolitan areas, say the Mumbais, the Bangalores, but also the tier 2 cities. So in urban India, you're still looking about 51 million people who own smartphones, and that's quite a large addressable market that I don't think anybody is really taking seriously, but it's still massive. So Moonfrog, we're actually we're placing bets in India. We're making games for the Indian market, and we're actually seeing a lot of traction amongst our audience. It's also a very difficult audience to really understand. They're young guys, usually in college, early jobbers, who are earning a salary if they're working, which is about anything from 10% to 75% of what somebody with a similar job would earn in Europe. So these guys aren't earning a lot, but there's a large volume of them. And it's not necessarily that the standards of living are growing, like it's not getting any better, it's just the prices of phones are dropping. And it's hitting this sweet spot, which is different for every country in Asia. In India, everyone seems to believe it's around about $80 for a smartphone. And as soon as smartphones start costing that amount, then you'll start to see penetration go an awful lot higher. And also, it's a generation, Gen Y in general, that trusts the internet more than any other generation before it. And this is especially for everyone in this room, this is quite important because when it comes to payments and e-commerce, in the US at least, Gen Y, at least 50% of them have bought something online. So that bodes well for everybody in gaming, right? Who wants to try and monetize that audience. And it's not as if it's a trend. It's more like an unstoppable force. These guys are just it's inevitable that these guys will grow up and they'll eventually become your strivers, become your business people, who will eventually be your core audience. So it's best to really think about them right now and capture them at this point in time. So it's not just that age group. I mean, that age group has always really existed. It's the fact that all these new smartphones that are coming online are not really being sold to people like us. We already, I hope the smartphone penetration in Casual Connect is probably about 100%. The guys who are buying smartphones are actually in these tier 2 cities. In India, you'd have like Lucknow. I'm not sure what a Chinese tier 2 city would be, but Chengdu, these kind of places. So what's actually happening as well? It's with a smartphone, you have access to the internet, and through the internet, you have this globalization effect that's sort of going on. And it's closing the gap between how, I guess, worldly wise a tier 1 city occupant or student would be versus a tier 2 city occupant.
Chih-Han, thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So we work with a lot of publishers and developers all the time. So I'm trying to recall how I compare against like two or 3 years ago and now, and what are the sort of major differences, and so can represent the trends of Asia. I think the number one, actually I have 3 major observations. Number one, I'm seeing Asian market is actually fragmented into 4 or 5 different sub-regions. I think number one is a Great China region. China, Hong Kong, Macau has getting together and aggregate into a similar homogeneous regions in Asia. And Japan and Korea developed into 2 independent, very big market. And we are also seeing that Southern Asia is still slightly different, but actually also can be considered a single region, with Malaysia and Singapore actually sitting in the middle of Great China and also Southern Asia. So we actually, when you think about going to Asia, I think the first step is get sort of separate the markets or classify the market correctly. And for current classification, I'm not particularly familiar with Russia and India, but at least for the regions I'm very familiar with and work with the clients all the time, I think it's getting divided into these 4 different regions. And each region is actually have a very distinct gaming behavior and also very different big players in each 4 of the regions. And so you cannot just consider we are going to Asia and so set one strategy that fits all. I think that's the market is getting differentiated, so it's actually cannot be considered as a whole. I think second observation that we have found recently is big guys in each domestic regions is actually going so one layer out of their country. This actually happened quite a lot. For example, Chinese publishers start going to Hong Kong, Taiwan as first stop, and Singapore, Malaysia as second stop. That actually happens all the time, and actually happen very frequently in the recent activities. And a Japanese publisher, and although considered a little bit more conservative or traditional initially, but they are still also going out to sort of they call manga culture countries like Taiwan, Hong Kong as their first stop. And we are comparing with 2 years ago, where the big guys, they are going everywhere. International expansion seems to be like going to one continent to the other continent. That's so rapidly. We are actually seeing those big guys and both big local domestic players actually making a more steady and also more deeper investment in each country they have gone to. So it's no longer that you spread a lot of marketing budgets and that's done. It's more like setting up a branch office and really cultivate market, really understand it, work with local partners, and also work with distributors like closely. I think that's sort of that also means that our mobile game and app ecosystem start moving from the gold rush periods into more solid economy periods. So actually, I will consider that as a very healthy transition from the past. And third, I think it's a little bit not so obvious as a trend, but we are seeing that is more and more verticalized or more and more specialized publishers start emerging. And I think that's also very healthy for the ecosystem. So because the publisher, instead of just getting spreading out marketing budgets, is actually getting more and more professional help for developers. I think that's also a trend that we have seen recently. For example, the Thailand specialized publishers or the sort of a MMORPG specialized publisher that start emerging in the region.
I want to pick up Chih-Han's point earlier on sort of international players going to local markets and spending a lot of money on marketing. Yeah. So I mean, I know a lot of you are developers here, and getting users are always a top of mind share. And actually, show of hands, how many casual gaming companies are there here? Show of hands. Okay, casual game. So I mean, like casual gaming. I mean, we have seen to be a really decent casual gaming company. I mean, you need 1 million DAUs, right? How do you even acquire the active users? How do what I would like to pick the panel's thoughts on what are some of the things that game developers, casual game developers, think about when they acquire users. How do you do marketing? How do you do local promotion? Is spending a lot of money like celebrities worth it? Is it how do you work with the app store? Oli?
Okay. So, I think just leading on to a point that Chih-Han had raised before about newer markets versus older ones. As a, again, game developer perspective, I think I like to solve things with game design. So I find that the newer markets, you need to use old school design thinking. With the older markets, they're more, I guess, you can give them new and innovative game designs, and they'll be more perceptive to it. It's almost as if you're going into a new market, pretty much all of new school game design goes out the window. Any genre that has been created since about 2008, the era of Facebook really, doesn't really exist anymore. And you have to go back to square one and build it up from scratch. So really it's, this is not to do with marketing, I'll get there eventually. So first of all, you have to have an appealing product, otherwise marketing is essentially useless. So first of all, get that product out there, make sure it appeals to that correct market. And then in terms of, for marketing, I'm sorry, Chih-Han, as a developer as well, I would not want to pay for installs unless I absolutely have to. I would first go down the viral route and see if I can make that work. Okay. So I guess the second elephant in the room, we're collecting elephants, that everybody is talking about actually would be chat. And I think there's still a long way to go with chat. I really hope it goes the way of Facebook and it embraces viral channels. And in the candid spirit of Casual Connects, let's just not call it viral, let's just call it spam. So if Facebook embraced spam, they knew spam would always happen. So they made spam presentable. And they try to create stories, they try to create awesome artworks like cogs, and you have like really elaborate pictures that would attract you into that ad or that feed. I think chat networks need to realize the same thing. Spam is going to happen. Developers will figure it out whether you like it or not. You should embrace it and try and make it meaningful. So yeah, that's what I would say about
Chih-Han, your thoughts on marketing?
Sure. Yeah, I think I also present three interesting trends that I have seen recently, and I think and what we see quite effective or quite quite new, and what based on observation, because I was like everybody, I was a game developer, so it's very easy for me to compare what we did past then and what we do now, and now I'm seeing more and more publisher and how they do it. And the first of all, I think comparing with in the past, I think marketers actually going to two very extreme route for me. They are going to extremely a new cutting edge tech company to do their promotion like our company, and they also going to extremely traditional one. They start doing the TVC and the bus, and then also outdoors. And for the extremely high-tech ones, like the company like ours, like specialize in real-time bidding, so as they can target the audience much more precisely, or do even cross-screen targeting that, so they can run one campaign that can across different screens. I think these marketers' adoption rate is actually getting really high, and I think recently we are also working with just as Oliver mentioned in Messenger ads. We try to integrate real-time bidding inside in Messenger apps. The pitfall in Messenger apps is like pretty much there's no targeting before, but just a very recent development that we're still in beta, we actually seen really strong. Actually, some of my customers in the audience we start trying that in Messenger advertising with real-time bidding. That actually works really well. And secondly, and the on the other route, we are seeing a lot of TVC and also the outdoors for especially in Asian region, like I've seen quite a lot in Japan and Taiwan and Hong Kong, really leveraging the traditional media. So it's like as a gaming marketer, it's actually quite busy because I think that in professional agency usually you have digital team and traditional media team, but as a game marketer, they are need to familiar with all kinds of tools, a very wide spectrums, and so the key takeaway for that is I think those a lot traditional media is actually we are seeing a lot use that as a branding effects or retention purpose, and using the more hybrid recent more cutting edge technology like targeting tools, and there's sort of user acquisition really driving a real performance one, and combine the two can actually create a quite well conversion rate. That's actually sort of a key to success when we run those campaigns simultaneously, and we are actually seeing quite good results. And that's sort of a one key trend that we are seeing recently compared against the 2 to 3 years ago. And secondly, probably a lot of people probably have forgotten, probably including myself, as like 2 to 3 years ago, probably we have seen a lot of pay app distribution channel, more like app promotion content, like blogs or free app a day type of a promotion. Because of the freemium model is getting so as a major trend, that part start fading out of the equation, and it's actually becoming more and more niche marketing tools for special type of audiences. I think I saw combine 3 trends into 2, but pretty much these 2 are the sort of major marketing trend that we have seen recently.
Got it. So Ollie believes in variety, Chih-Han believes in 2 extremes, old school and sort of cutting edge. So I'd like to double click on both of these points. Oliver, you came from Zynga, right, where you looked at how the LTV CAC math worked for games, and Chih-Han obviously looked at how this worked for some gaming companies. What are some of the lessons you learned from looking at this, and what are some of the pitfalls you wish you have avoided, and the winning moves? Maybe Chih-Han can take it first.
Oh, okay, sure. There are a couple of things like we for game marketers or game promotion company that we feel like you several metrics to pay several metrics pay special attention. First, I think a lot of time you have to view marketing as part of the experiences of your game. So we as a game developer probably build very nice game, and then we take the best screenshot and then put into the app store, and then create the best creative as a wrap, and also all the cover of the game, and then but a lot of the time that's something is missing is probably how these 3 elements fit together. So maybe I can give a more concrete example what I mean by that. For example, if you have a creative that is showing a character with a very nice sword, and then the player click that because of that very nice looking sword. And secondly, if you go to an app store and the screen is so small, so they can actually even see that sword. They are coming dropping out of a conversion funnel. And if on the other hand, if that's both are pretty nicely done, in the 3rd step, if a level 1 you give the sword, this very nice sword to the player, they are not going to stay very long. So really have to think that as a sort of vertical experience. Instead of having each individual marketing or game development elements, that how these 3 should fit together. I think that's an important lesson of that. And I would say to try to think that marketing as it's not really a promotion, but it's more like a process of matching you and the right audiences. And it's a matching process. It's like a marriage. You need to be attractive, but in the meanwhile be authentic. Otherwise, marriage probably not last very long. So it's not like one night stand. You just need to be attractive. Yeah. So that's sort of analogy I would like to use, and try to make the sort of coherent story from the creative and app store downloads, and then eventually the in-game experience. And second, I think nowadays I think that I don't see a lot of problems, especially with a lot of advanced tech to help to get in a good, extremely it's very good click-through rate is a problem, but more like the post-click conversion rate. We are still, because with a lot of gamers, they have so many choices, probably low-layer apps, low-layer games with tens or hundreds of games already in a device. So how to do the post-click conversion rate well is actually a key. So App Store optimization is something really to pay attention to. And so first of all, to do some call analysis of the App Store keywords or attracting message you have done. I think that and really compare different versions, how that drive the post-click conversion rate. I think that is becoming very important. Also, in Asia, probably recognize the differentiated different regions inside Asia. That so you may probably have to do a little bit localization for each of these 4 regions. I think that's sort of also a very important, very important part of the part of the marketing. And for the last part, I think to really instrument the when, for example, you want to test out something and to really get the instrument ready is actually also very important. So that's sort of 3 key. To view marketing as a matching process instead in a promotion process is actually making the conversion and also overall marketing budget much more worth it.
Super. Oliver, from a Zynga days?
From the
Lessons from Zynga.
old days. I only have a couple of points on this. So marketing pitfalls. You definitely need to hit your KPIs. This is really obvious stuff before you launch your game. If you do not do that, you're in for a world of trouble. So just be confident in your data. I know that's difficult sometimes. And I mean, things like your player funnel need to be sorted. I like your analogy about the getting into a relationship first date thing. I like to think of it as a customer, as somebody you're chasing. This maybe some girl in the office that you've been dying to like go on your first date with, and then finally you get on that first date, and you just want to make it the best first date ever. You want to go, I don't know, scuba diving. You want to swim with whales. Common pitfalls. What I've seen in experience is that sometimes before you even start marketing, you tend to make too many experiments all at once. Before you even really know who your audience is. I know that you've probably developed a game and you have a specific audience in mind. It's like, yeah, I'm definitely going for age 45 and above American ladies. But in the actuality, when you launch, your game may end up appealing to somebody who you did not quite expect. And I have experience of this. I mean, one strategy game that I used to work on ended up appealing to, I think, school-age kids in Turkey. I did not aim for that. I did not expect that to happen. In marketing, you should really be aiming to just work in broad strokes initially. You should not be creating tiny variations like, okay, let's make a creative which has like one guy with an iPad, okay, maybe 2 guys with an iPad, maybe 3 girls and 1 guy with an iPad. So no, you should just be like, okay, what are the general things I need to get? What are the demographics? Where are they? What age group?
Got it. So now you have a game, it's working well, you like the product, you want to do a soft launch, you want to do a small beta. Which geographies will you do it in? Which sort of regions exhibit the same characteristics? I know, Ollie, you're doing some soft testing in some geographies.
Yeah, I find I'm all ears on this one actually because I'm still trying to figure it out. So maybe you guys can shed some light. But I have a strategy. I'm not sure if it's the best strategy. I'll share my strategy. So, I mean, soft launching is about finding an audience which is like your target audience, which has similar buying habits, that have similar behaviors. And in Asia, as you were saying, we're fragmenting, right, into 6 very particular markets. And you need to find 6 very particular soft launch zones. Like I'm working in India, it's a very particular zone. Where do you soft launch? My strategy right now is launch your game under a different name entirely, like not your company name. Don't market it and see how it goes. And there are a lot of risks to doing that. You can, I mean, if your game, the purpose of doing that is just to check if you're making a synchronous game. You want to check if it's stable. You want to check whether, just collecting your data. You want to optimize. It makes a lot of sense to do this. I just wish there was a safer way. You could end up getting loads of traction on a game that still isn't 100% stable, and it's a good problem to have, having like a lot of traction, but I'd rather have a lot of traction on a game that I'm confident in, that is stable, than something that I'm still sort of working and optimizing. Otherwise it could potentially become a mad rush to get everything working. And so yeah, you could end up like with a game with 10% of your users experiencing crashes, and you have a large volume, which is not a great place. So yeah, please let me know if there's a better solution to this one. Oh yeah, the idea is, by the way, to, after your soft launch is done, to take that app down entirely and then relaunch under your company's name with a full marketing drive.
Yeah, I think Oliver's approach is very interesting and very also very creative. I'm more from a statistical background, so I'm sharing. So some of the approach I would take, and I would feel more scientific on these spectrums. So first, I think since in Asia you can divide it into 4 to 6 different markets, but inside each inside each regions, actually there's still slight differences. For example, in China, people like bloody, maybe more bloody, more sexuality games versus Taiwan, Hong Kong. That's the differences. I think a way I would suggest is to for each of the inside region to create a sort of distance matrix. Each row and each column represent each country. So, and inside that region, so each sort of elements, you can fill in what's the difference when you compare the ranking charts. What's the difference, how far away these 2 countries are. So that will give you some idea when you test out one market, you want to generalize to the second market or third markets, how much risk you are taking. So that's sort of the first thing I would do, to divide it you want to sample to do soft launch and want to sample the users into several different regions. And within each region, then create sort of a distance matrix. And so you know how to, when you sample one of a more so-called example market, how that generalize to others. And secondly, a common sort of mistake we have seen is to pull out the soft launch too early. Again, so I'm from more scientific statistics background, so I will go back to p-test or t-test. So know how many samples you need, how many install you need, how many pay user you need in order to conclude the ARPU and also the retention rate. I think that's a lot of times that we are seeing that is to launch in some country but pull back too early, but it's not even enough samples to conclude yet. And that's also one common problems. So we need to address, and also because we are seeing the advertising data day by day. What a very interesting fact is that different games actually exhibit very different conversion or paying behavior inside time within the time period. So there's some periodic, either weekly or monthly behavior. So another dimension to think is about time. So make sure that sample across the time is actually very important in order for a soft launch to be and to test a market to be meaningful. So not just to test Monday. Monday is probably not your paying user day. Probably Sunday is. And actually, different game has very different behavior. That's what we have seen.
Super. So great. So now you soft launched the game. It works. Now you want to launch in the main markets. How do you press on the acceleration button? You want to put your foot on the pedal now. What tricks, technology, what tips will you do? And I think this is the most interesting question for some of our audience here.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I can start by sharing. We see a lot of I've seen sort of hundreds, thousands of campaigns. I think it can be rapidly classified into two categories. And others is probably a mix of these two categories. One is burst, one is sustaining, or burst. Some people do weekly burst. Sometimes somebody do monthly burst. Sometimes do burst then sustain. Somebody do burst, sustain. So it's really strategy-wise, it's actually really a mixture of a lot of different ways. I think for that purpose, I think one interesting way to see is whether your organic, when you burst your campaign, whether organic download is actually the conversion rate is actually is good, and so calculate that based on your CPI. So basically, you're doing burst, and then you need to be a realistic CPI based on the burst results and how many organic download you have attract. Of course, that will decay over time because you have done it, and then the ROI will actually decay over time. And then second time, you will become the cost become higher, and then you probably attract a little bit fewer organic download in the second and third time. And we actually, I think there's one single important metrics like I think a lot of game publisher developer might pay attention to is a sort of conversion rate, post-click conversion rate. So if we are seeing a lot of if the apps is actually the post-click conversion is very high, usually it's very good for both organic and also a sustaining campaign. So the ROI for running these two campaigns become very rewarding. And so if I would suggest, when tuning again, also try to tune the post-click conversion rate. Once that is high, that means that the experience of downloading your game and start using your games has been quite smooth enough. So no matter you do burst or no matter you do sustaining, that actually become very meaningful. On the second aspects, I think there's a couple of new marketing tool I would suggest and also recommend, and some of them we are working on it. One is sort of a cross-screen solutions. And so this is the solution that, for example, you can recognize the same user only which devices. I think because a lot of time when we are driving good ROI, it's not getting the right user. Another big cost is actually waste in reaching the wrong users. So, for example, I give you an example. If some user is not interested in your game, and then you know that and put on an iPhone, and then seeing that he's apparently not interested in that, and then a lot of time because of a fragmented of app device system, so you do a game for that particular user on the iPad, and then so the advertising on iPad is completely a waste. So the reason we also develop into this cross-screen solution is that what we learn from one device can be actually leveraged into the second. For example, in the iPad device, the user is apparently not interested in that, then we don't show that again on iPhone. That we actually see the ROI has immediately boosted a lot. And that's also very sort of a very cutting edge and very new tech to leverage on. And on the other hand, on the positive side, if someone is interested in that and click the ads, then retarget on iPads. It's also very sort of very powerful. Another trend we are seeing recently is sort of a native ads. Because of Facebook and also the messengers, they have shown that the powerful of native ads, and what we are seeing the next generation of that is to combine the native ads with a real-time bidding. A real-time bidding is a sort of, for those audience not particularly familiar with that, is a way to bid and also price each impression differently, or pick each particular Or more precisely, you can also choose the right impression to buy instead of buying a bulk of impression based on traditional targeting parameters, and also price each impression differently. Because the native ads give a native the experience, so that you can drive the users. So the advertising format is more powerful. We combining the RTB and then combining more targeting solution. Actually, we are seeing the ROI become immediately higher, and this is sort of extremely new. So it's just happening probably this month, and the new tech just emerging. But we in our initial experiments that we are seeing the effectiveness is actually very high. So we are actually thinking this will be after the Messenger, after the Facebook, after the ad network, after the RTB, probably that will be the next. Will be a sort of a native ads plus RTB, and also the cross-screen solution. I think the two approaches I would see is quite differentiated and all quite effective. Yeah, I think that's pretty much we.
Super. Oliver?
Yeah, well, I would just add to that really. Chih-Han is the expert in this particular field. But when it comes to tech, I would completely agree with native apps and advertising natively within apps. So currently we have about, well, so there are some facts here. So people's time spent when they're on their smartphones, you got about 32% of that time spent in games. And there are about, 2 million games right now in the field. So none of those games really link to each other. So what this reminds me of is the internet before links existed. What I'm really excited about is the prospect of deep linking. And right now, there are clear benefits in e-commerce. You can advertise on Facebook and drop somebody right in the middle of your buy flow. You're already looking at the pair of sneakers that you wanted to buy, all this stuff. But with games, there are really awesome use cases that will help with your marketing. For example, you share a link with me, especially when it comes to like UGC or leaderboards, or maybe I'm just playing a hand of poker. I want you come join me in this very room. Come look at the thing that I just made. It just makes sharing and virality that much easier. So you can actually, through ads, you can end up reactivating people. If they've already installed your app and then they see an ad on Facebook, they could just click on that ad and it'll take you to a particular place within your app, which is, in my opinion, is pretty awesome.
Super. So I have one last question before we can open it up for floor. I don't know how much time we have left. So now the game works, the game hits, you have downloads. The next question is engagement. How are you going to keep them engaged? How do you keep your D1, D7, D30 numbers up? How do you have a flat line from D7 to D30? How to keep your users coming back?
I mean, there are I could go on forever talking about how to retain users. What's important is that your company has a huge focus on retaining in the first place. Whatever you focus on, if that's your main focus, you're more likely to succeed doing it. So, I mean, obviously there are the KPIs with various genres and what you should be aiming for. Broadly speaking, you have 3 main categories these days. And you retain people differently throughout all these categories. Yeah. Just for clarity, casino, arcade, strategy. I don't think we have much time. We got like 5 minutes. Okay, so I'll be brief. So you may hit your KPIs in each of these genres, and if you do, that justifies higher ad spend. And but there's a big problem with using these KPIs to find out what your lifetime value is of your players. Because I feel like the lifetime value sort of formula that everyone's using right now it's a very helpful tool, but it's also flawed in many ways. Some people look at lifetime value, but fail to consider the amount of money that it costs to bring a service to your players. So really, you should be looking at your net lifetime value. And also, when you're trying to retain your players, you have to realize that I guess increasing retention may have an impact on your revenue. If you're spending a lot, then you're going to burn through your addressable market faster. Every single facet of the lifetime value equation is just linked to each other very strongly. They're not individual things that you can optimize for. You can't just say, okay, let's just do retention, let's increase our retention, and expect that to not have an effect on everything else. So really, I guess key takeaway, as we're running out of time, and I want to give you a chance to answer this question, maybe, if you're lucky, is to really evaluate your business in a very candid and thorough manner. And only by doing that, you will guarantee success. Very much.
Super. Chih-Han, any thoughts on that?
Sure. I think for retention or re-engagement, I think really come down. I think I will speak in the order of effectiveness. I think the first one, the most effective one, is game mechanism. The game mechanism need to have a back hook and then strong enough. I think that's the most important one. Periodic events or some mechanism that of a collection over time, that's definitely help the engagement. That's assuming that the customer is stop being loyal to your game. And I think second, fan page, CRM, email management. That's always serve it as a second wall, as reminders. That's also proven to be effective. Third, I think you can also leverage on some marketing retargeting tool. For example, the people who already reached the level 3 or 4, as Oliver just mentioned, to retarget them and then come back to level 3 and 4. I think these are sort of 3 key, I would say, the key mechanism to make a user scammer to re-engage the game.
Super. I think we have time for maybe one question, and then we have to tie a bow on it. Any last questions? Going. Gone. Okay,
you have a question.
Oh, I have a question. So because you have asked us many questions, I want to ask you a question that what type of, because Sequoia Capital has been a very successful venture capital, and as you have sticks, right? And what type of gaming company are you looking for in South Asia?
We are a big fan of games, but I think we see games as 2 categories. I think one, which sort of produce content. And these companies tend to trade at multiples that are like media companies. I think the second category of companies are the companies that have sort of distribution capabilities, platform capabilities, and audience aggregation companies. And these kind of companies who tend to trade at companies more like SaaS or venture growth companies. And obviously, the second category kind of companies, get us more excited. I mean, if you look at our old investments, EA, right? They used to trade at 5 times revenues when retail format of distributing games used to be the norm. But as the App Store came along, online came along, the retail prowess, of EA became less relevant, and they went down to like 1.5 times revenue. So that's sort of give an example. And if you look at sort of the categories which Oliver mentioned, I mean, we look at different things for different categories. I think taking off the hat from a venture investor, but looking at what is a good game, right? I mean, you look at casual gaming, you probably need a very high DAU, more than 1 million DAUs to be decent. ARPU ranges anywhere from 5 cents to 15 cents. You have you need a fairly high retention rate, 60%, at least 50%,
D1, at least a 30% D7, at least 20% D14 or D30. But if you look at sort of a strategy game, you don't need that much DAUs. You can, even a 50K or 100K DAUs is pretty good because you're essentially a weapons dealer, right? And the peak revenue actually comes, sometimes 6 months or 1 year after the launch of the game. But you see here that the up DAO is very good. The up DAO can be anywhere from 80 cents to $2. You don't really actually need a very high engagement. You can do a very decent strategy game with 35% D1, 40%, or 20% D7, or even 10% D30. And then the other category is sort of slot machines, and that's sort of an interesting category. Or it's called casino gaming, of which slot machine is one genre. That's interesting. Then you sort of you need sort of lower DAUs than casual game. You need a few 100K DAUs. You're looking at also fairly high engagement, 50% D1 at least. And up DAO is 20 cents to 50 cents. So I think that's what makes an interesting game company. But I think what's more interesting is how do you move it from the first category I said, which is a pure content business, to a more distribution, platform, and audience aggregation business. I think sometimes you look at games, you look at the Rovios of the world, you look at Clash of Clans of the world. It's easy to see why investors drew over them because a pure play game can get revenues very fast. But hey, you can usually convince yourself that it's actually the second category. They actually have audience aggregation benefits, they have distribution benefits, they have platform benefits. But I think they are really the outliers rather than the norm. So I think the other question is sustainability, right? I mean, how sustainable can hits be? I think gaming is hit-driven business. Although we know that hits is a fairly long tail, but how relevant is one hit? Given that you have to produce a string of them. So that's sort of what we look at. I think last of all is the team. I think we must have talked to maybe 50 or 60 M&A corp dev teams of all the top gaming companies around the world. I think numbers are just one thing they look for, but I think end of the day is whether the team can execute, can deliver the roadmap, and at end of the day publish great games. So that's sort of an overview of what we look for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
to the panel. Yeah.
Thanks, Oliver. Yeah. Thanks, Chih-Han. We really appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.